Frontline Conversations, leading the debate since 1984.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Frontline Conversations. Today we have a very distinguished railway official, Mr. K. Balakesari, speaking to us on a range of issues that affect railways. Mr. Balakesari served in various positions as official in the railway setup hierarchy, and then was secretary to the railway board, was also member staff in the railway board. He has also held positions as general manager, also helped set up a zone for the Indian Railways. So we go to him and we ask him about his latest article to begin with. Sir, thank you for agreeing to talk to Frontline. And my first question, obviously, is from the article that you did for the Hindu. What is this greenwashing concept that you have talked about in the railways, and why is it important to even talk about this particular concept?
See, the word, the greenwashing, I had coined myself. Uh, it is a combination of whitewashing and brainwashing. And the idea was to convey that what is being projected as a, an environmental project of reducing pollution is not exactly that, though there might be some gains, but it is not like a very revolutionary change from what it is today or it was earlier also.
Yeah.
So, merely because you have changed the mode of traction
Yeah.
from one, that is the diesel traction, to electric traction, doesn't mean that necessarily mean in Indian conditions. I make a very specific mention of that. Under Indian conditions, it doesn't translate necessarily into a um, gain as far as environmental pollution is concerned. And I have given the reasons in the article. In fact, this is a follow-up article of one which I had written earlier for your sister publication, Business Line. I think it was published in October 2023, when I had projected this problem of a large number of diesel locomotives becoming redundant as a result of this fast-paced electrification. It's not because of electrification per se, but the rate at which it is being done and for the reason for which it is being done.
Mhm.
That is the basic concept of the whole article. Yeah.
Sir, you had mentioned in that article that given the fact that our energy basket is largely based on thermal protection,
Yes.
and that's why it doesn't make sense for
Yeah.
the electrification process to
Uh,
be accelerated
yeah.
this fast. Is that your main concern? Are we just passing
See,
the
there
buck
are
from one
yeah,
place to another?
there are 2 or 3 points. One is it is not this article, as I have stressed, is nothing to do with that old debate of electric traction versus diesel traction. Each side can go on claiming that they are better off, and that is
Mm.
more or less settled because the government has taken a policy
Yeah,
decision
yeah,
to go completely to electrify the entire network.
yeah.
The problem arises when and at what rate you do it and for what purpose.
Mm, mm.
Now, as according to a published pamphlet which I have quoted in 2021, this 100% electrification has two main objectives. One is to improve the environmental,
Yeah.
the pollution aspect. The other is that you prepare the ground for introduction of non-conventional sources of energy, because that also generates electricity. It doesn't have anything to do with diesel
Yeah.
traction. So those two are accepted. There is no basic dispute with that. But what is the effect of doing this?
mm, mm,
Are you achieving the objective? And as a result of this unseemly hurry, as I would call it,
mm, mm.
what are you doing with your valuable assets which you already have? That is the main thrust of my article.
Mm.
Because as a government organization, we are answerable to the public for the way that we use
Yeah.
our assets, and they are not very cheap assets. They are all
Yeah.
costly assets costing crores. Today, a modern diesel locomotive costs anything up to 50 crores.
Mm.
The earlier models might be cheaper, but still they are into the crores, not
Yeah.
in lakhs. So you are talking about setting aside a large number, running into hundreds
Yeah.
of assets which cost in tens of crores.
Yeah.
So, and for what objective? Are you achieving that objective?
Mm.
In fact, after writing that article, I came across another interesting bit of information
Yeah.
which didn't come to me at the time when I wrote, which further reinforces what I have said. If you recall in the article, I have said that 50% of the energy that is generated in the country
It's from thermal.
is from
Yeah.
coal-based
Yeah.
thermal plants. Now, I took that figure from a website of the Ministry of Power because that is probably the most authentic
Absolutely.
figure that you can get. What I came to know recently through the courtesy of one of my ex-colleagues, that figure is the figure of the installed capacity.
Oh. Oh.
The actual proportion of power injected into the system, into the grids, is much higher.
Mm.
In fact, I can show you the latest figure of the Ministry of Power. According to the Ministry of Power, the Central Electricity Authority, the latest figures uh, is that for the target for the year 24-25 is fixed as 1,900 billion units,
Mm.
comprising of 1,444.943 billion units of thermal, 147.709 billion units of hydro, and 55.348 nuclear, 8 billion units import from Bhutan, and 244 billion units the rest. Now, 1,444.943
Mm.
is more than 76%
Yeah.
of the total generated capacity.
Mm.
So instead of 50% today, you are dependent on thermal plants up to a level of more than 75-76%. Pollution is just being shifted from along the tracks, which I have mentioned,
Yeah.
to near the thermal plants. And finally, it goes into the atmosphere.
True. True.
So, where is the environmental gain unless you are able to generate about the majority of your the generation
Yeah.
is from non coal based sources or fossil fuel based sources.
Yeah. That's
That is
true.
what.
But I think that's probably not the concern of railways because we all operate in silos. We say that we have
No,
pushed.
no.
It's up to the, uh, generating, the NTPC on the
See,
or the others.
ultimately, what is your objective? Your objective is to improve the environment, and the environment is not limited to only the the neighborhood of the railway track.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is polluting the atmosphere. It is the whole world, in fact.
Yeah.
At least you take the country. It is going to the same atmosphere the rest of the country is there.
Yeah.
So it is fallacious to claim that because you have changed the mode of traction from diesel to electric. In fact, I would say, why do you call a locomotive a diesel locomotive? Because the primary fuel used is diesel
Yeah.
to work a engine,
Yeah.
a diesel engine,
True.
an internal combustion engine, which is turning a generator
True.
and which is feeding the current. It is also an electric traction ultimately.
Mm, mm.
It is a mobile electric locomotive, whereas the what you call an electric locomotive is a coal electric locomotive in Indian context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just as this is a diesel
Yeah.
locomotive, electric locomotive, that is a coal electric locomotive because most
Yeah.
of the generated power is coming from burning coal.
Yeah.
Only thing you don't see it.
Yeah.
It is not in the locomotive.
True. So you compare efficiencies of say a diesel engine with that of an electric engine.
Yeah.
Does it engine? I'm talking like a common man, or we can say power. So is there any significant difference? I do see that when it came to WAM4 in the early years,
I
it
can
was doing it can easily do 120, but the electrical engineering department refused to agree.
I won't be able to give because I am a little out of touch with the exact figures. But in general, I can say that an electric diesel locomotive efficiency is about 35%.
Mm.
Whereas in the Indian context, I make a very specific point. In the Indian context, the finally what the efficiency that is delivered by the electric locomotive after taking the entire circuit of burning coal, then transmission losses,
Yeah.
everything, it is around 25. Whereas the world standards, I understand,
Mm.
the best could be as high as 45. So it is not that electric locomotives cannot function under better
Mm.
conditions of efficiency. In the Indian context, today, the electric locomotive efficiency is relatively less than that of the diesel locomotive. Again, I am stressing that this is not about, this is only a side argument. The point is, by this haste or the hurry in going after this electrification 100%, what you are doing is to render a number of valuable assets
Mm.
redundant,
Mm.
or you will be using them in a less optimal way, as was quoted in one of the reports. I don't know from where that information was
Export.
given. No,
Yeah.
the that 2,500 locomotives
Mm.
will be set aside for disaster
Oh yeah.
management. On the one hand, you say that your safety is coming down, the accidents are coming down. I saw a statement by the minister himself,
Yeah.
the parliament, that last year, 23-24, the number of accidents had come down to about 40,
Yeah.
40 or 47.
Yeah. 40, and I think this
Yes,
year
in
29.
that
Yeah.
range. And so far this year, it is about 29.
Yeah.
So if you extrapolate that, it will go up to 35,
Mm.
roughly.
Mm.
When the number of accidents, after all, in a railway, normally when you call a disaster management, it refers to a restoration work after an accident.
Mm. Mm.
It could mean sometimes floods and earthquake, very rarely,
Yeah.
but generally other types of natural disasters. But in this case, what is the need for keeping such a large number of locomotives, diesel locomotives, even after you have done 100% electrification,
Mm. Mm.
as for disaster management, except that you are landed with a number of recently manufactured locomotives. You can't possibly just throw them away. So you must find some reason to keep them running.
True. Mm.
So what will ultimately, which I have pointed out, what will happen is, apart from electric locomotives running on 100% electrified
Yeah.
territory, you will also have diesel locomotives working. Maybe not fully utilized till unless all the load is being, the traffic can be handled by electric
Yeah.
locomotives. These are all the contradictions in this whole concept of 100% electrification, improving your, I mean, the reason for that being to improve the environment.
Can we, use it some other way? Because I remember when the gauge conversion had taken place, your YAMs were converted into, the wheels were converted into broad gauge, and the meter gauge, diesel locomotives were used for shunting purposes and to pull the train in and all that. You can still see it in central stations. Is there a possibility for the broad gauge diesel locomotives to be?
At the beginning of my article, I have mentioned that this is based on a report which the Rights had given, that they have won 2 contracts for supplying re-engineered or
Yeah.
converted locomotives to some African railways. Now, Indian Railways have in the past delivered converted locomotives from meter gauge to uh, Cape gauge, what is called, that is about 67 millimeters wider than the meter gauge. 1067 meter gauge is 1000. Now it is, and that has been done. About a number of locomotives have been exported to African countries and even to Malaysia, in fact. But these are cases where a locomotive with a narrower gauge is being used in a slightly wider gauge, which is a easier technical problem because you have more space. Whereas to convert a broad gauge locomotive to work on a almost meter gauge, 1067 is just 67 millimeters. It has not been done so far by the Indian Railways. And you have to accommodate all the equipment within a smaller, narrower platform. And that is a challenge. It's almost like rebuilding a locomotive, except probably you are going to use the power pack. That means the diesel engine and probably the electrics. But the rest of it has to be built completely on a new platform. And then it has to be slightly shorter depending on the moving dimensions of the other railway. And they will have to conduct detailed stability vehicle riding trials to make sure that the stability is okay. So it is not as straightforward as converting a meter gauge locomotive into a slightly wider gauge.
Okay. Okay. Now you look at 2 or 3 of the seminal moments in railways itself. One was the gauge conversion,
Yes.
where all the meter gauge, all the narrow gauge were converted into uni gauge, broad gauge, and you look at this electrification. How do you compare both? Was the kind of pace shown by Jafar Saree and the others as railway ministers, was it really necessary to convert all the tracks into broad gauge? And do you see the similar kind of push in the electrification itself? So is this comparable at all?
You see, these are two different aspects of the railways infrastructure. We had inherited from, for historical reasons, uh, 3 or slightly more because there were different gauges of narrow gauge also. So you can say broadly 3 gauges: broad gauge, meter gauge, and narrow gauge. Now, there were break-off gauge points which were a problem as far as operational facility is concerned. Therefore, we had transshipment. Any transshipment involves some loss, not only of time, but even wastage of goods, extra effort. I mean, the cost is going up, the transportation cost is going up. So, as a basic policy, a unigauge policy was okay. The pace of doing it, I mean, it is a decision which has to be taken by a sovereign, a government. Because are you willing to spend so much
Mm.
at this rate to
Mm.
convert everything? Because ultimately, once the entire system is converted,
Mm.
you do get the benefit
True.
of smooth movement all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to tell you about what might have happened if you had retained. There
Yeah.
very eminent railwaymen who felt that this complete gauge conversion
Mm.
is not necessary. But today we are in a reality is that almost everything is converted except probably the Nilgiri mountain railways,
Yeah.
some
Darjeeling. Yeah.
heritage
Yeah.
sections. The rest of it is all converted, and we are benefiting from it because of smoother
Mm.
flow of traffic, and that is not it is not a problem now. The break of gauge is
Mm.
not a problem. Whereas electric traction, as I said, I am not going into that because each side can
Mm.
uh, say that this is better because there are a
Mm.
number of conditions under which it is
Mm.
one is better than the other. There are railways which have never gone for wholesale electrification, the biggest of them being the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have all the oil that they want, they can buy also.
Yeah.
The only problem here is that there are a number of factors you have to consider when you do this type of change.
Mm.
And in this case, this particular aspect of rendering a large number of very costly assets.
Mm.
You have that report in the Hindu, which came early November about the rights.
Yeah.
It was mentioning a soon to be redundant
Yeah.
locomotive. They are already redundant, and that's what I mentioned in the article. When I got the information through Right to Information Act query, in middle of last year itself,
Mm.
there were more than 585 locomotives
Mm. Mm.
which had been stabled.
Mm.
This is a
Yeah.
term
Yeah.
railways use to just keep them
Mothball.
stored,
Yeah.
just park them
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
We have come from a generation where funds were short, all the resources were short.
Yeah.
We could never imagine
Yeah.
even a few 10 or 15 locos being kept aside just like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, from there, I have another question.
Yeah.
Uh, as a zonal manager and as somebody who has been in the railway board, power is always a problem, right? Locomotive availability of a locomotive is always a problem because efficient, judicious use of the
Yes.
locomotive, have a control
In
which
fact,
really follows the whole thing.
in
Now,
fa-
do you have enough electrical locomotives to meet the
no, we
demand?
don't have. No, I'll tell you the interesting. See, the whole. I'll come back to the origin of even the uh, business line article
Okay.
which I wrote. It was a casual remark by one of my ex colleagues in the railways. Do you know that there were locomotives which are stabled? At the same time, there are also freight rakes which are waiting for electric locos.
Oh God. Uh-huh.
I have mentioned that in the
Mm. Business line
business
article.
line article on 31/3/2023. There were about 46 freight rakes all
Yeah.
over the Indian railways waiting for electric locos. At the same time,
Mm.
there were 585 diesel locomotives in
Mm.
good
Stable.
working order but kept aside at various places. They may not be available at the place where it was required,
Yeah.
but it was there. The resource was there. It had already been stable because either the diesel maintenance depot has
Mm.
been repurposed for the purpose of maintaining electric locos,
Mm.
or electric locos have started working, but at that particular point, they were not available at a place where it is required.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very strange situation where you have on one side
Mm. Mm.
electric, the freight goods trains waiting for electric locos, and on the other you have hundreds of diesel locomotives which are in working condition but kept aside. This has never happened before. This is absolute criminal wastage of uh, assets.
So let me come to a political question. It's really up to you to answer it or not. See, when it comes to the creation of zones, we have seen that political considerations formed during the government, United Front government's time. Political considerations led to the formation of zones. Like that, for example, I can tell you in the case of steam locomotives, Shornur used to be in south. Shornur used to be the one of the loco sheds, and then when it moved to diesel locomotives, we have Erode as the nodal point for the for all repairs and all that. So there is a politics involved that Shornur was not converted into a diesel loco, but at this loco shed, whereas Erode becomes the loco shed. Now you have Varanasi and other places where the electric locomotives are being maintained. So is there a politics to it as well?
No,
Whether the way it moves?
I wouldn't like to go into the rights or wrongs of the decisions, but in the Indian context, you have to accept that many decisions regarding railways, because it is a government owned
Yeah,
organization, have political ramifications or interests, because
yeah,
politicians represent the people and they have to project their needs or requirements the way they consider
yeah,
will benefit the constituency which they are representing. As far as the shifting of maintenance depots and all, for everything you can find a political reason or not. In fact, I had mentioned about earlier about the formation of a new zone
yeah.
uh, at Bangalore, where I was in charge
Yeah.
of setting it up, 96, 97. It was shifted to Hubli.
Mm,
There might have been political considerations, but I would say it was a good move overall,
mm,
because instead of locating it in an already congested city, you have located it in a slightly less congested area and which required development. So a politician's angle is that yes, we want a uniform development, therefore it has to be
mm.
in Hubli and not in Bangalore. And people generally agreed it is within the same state, so
Yeah,
nobody can really complain about it.
true.
After all, you can't say that it has to be in a particular spot.
Yeah, yeah,
So the generation of employment, everything is within the state.
yeah,
So
true.
you can't escape the fact that being a government-run organization, many decisions are political. Politically, you can call it motivated or with political interest in the background. That's
Mhm.
the fact.
Yeah. And let us just move a little bit and talk about the new thing that has caught the imagination of India, the bullet train. You called, revenue streams coming from out of that as an oxymoron. Uh, is this aimed at just showcasing India or showing that India is a developed nation? Is this about development? Is this about, chest thumping? What is it? What is the bullet train? 100,000 crores. What is it about?
You see, I'll get to the background also to this. I personally have had experience of testing trains at speeds which are never been achieved before.
Mhm.
I was in the Research Design and
Yeah.
Standards organization in the early 70s, and I was attached to the vehicle dynamics wing for 4 years. And I have conducted trials 50 years back, 1974, around that, where we have conducted trials on the meter gauge, in those days unthinkable,
Mhm.
the Jaipur section, Rewari, Jaipur, that area. We have gone at 100 kilometers per hour, whereas the maximum speed on meter gauge in those days was 75 kilometers per hour.
Mhm.
We have done trials with the same old YDM-4 locomotives and our ICF all coil bogie and all that. And we proved that they can run at that speed. Similarly, we conducted a trial run in 1974 with a test train with available locomotives, WDM4, which is called in those days, a test coach and a test oscillograph car, which went at 177 kilometers per hour on
Wow.
the Kanpur Tundla section. Now, these are all things which make you more confident that yes, with the available technology, you can cross the barrier of speed that you have imposed. You can call it self-imposed. You can go up to, say, from 100 to 120 you went with Rajdhani. You could go up to the 130 now. As far as the high-speed trains are the bullet trains are concerned, there are two ways. One is look at it purely as a commercial proposition, or rather a financial sort of return what you get. To begin with, it may not be, but overall, it does give you benefit in terms of technology transfer, a different level of efficiency and operation. All these things are bound to migrate into the larger system. The same Indian Railways, of course, the track will be different. The agency running it will be uh, that high speed
Yeah.
rail authority or
Yeah.
whatever. But many of the practices adopted there can migrate or get transferred to the main Indian Railway network. So overall, it will be a benefit. I mean, you cannot judge it only by saying that it is not earning uh, profit and all.
Yeah. Looking
And
at
it may have even the surrounding areas, the benefit for
development.
the development of those areas. It will have knock-on effect.
Looking at two such standalone ventures, the Konkan Railway Corporation Limited and, of course, the Metro Rail Sridharan's Baby Limited. Now, have those experiences translated into helping out Indian Railways in any which way? Has there any, of course, not Konkan Railways, looking at the Delhi Metro, for instance, what has been the learning which has been incorporated into the rest of the Indian Railways? Is there anything
I
that you can
won't
think of?
say that anything has happened as far as I am aware, as far as the Delhi Metro is concerned, because it is wrong to equate metro system with the mainline operation. There are a lot of differences. I mean, the priorities are different, the method of operation is different. So, what has been transferred from, in fact, the initial transfer has been from Indian Railways to Metro with all the technical expertise and whatever manpower that we had.
Okay.
That is what
Yeah.
supported the Metro. Then, of course, they had their own recruitment. But as a normal thing, there is no such transfer of the procedures and things like that. I'm not aware of it.
The Konkan Railway has been around for what, 2 decades now. What has
It's,
been the learning from that? A separate corporation within the ambit of Indian
I,
Railways.
in fact, I was rather surprised to learn recently there was a news report that the Konkan Railway is going to be amalgamated with the Indian Railways. It is the other way around, which
Okay.
has happened,
Okay.
or which is likely to happen. Instead of the Indian Railways trying to adapt or adopt some procedures or their working methods, it is the Konkan Railway which may get joined with either a new zone, I don't know. But
Yeah.
there is a move, it appears, to integrate it with the Indian Railways because for financial reasons or whatever, they are not able to uh, sustain themselves as an independent corporation. So the government has decided probably to integrate them with the rest of the thing. And therefore, once you do that,
Yeah.
over a period of time, the practices of Indian Railways will permeate into Konkan Railway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely, we learned something from any of the practices that they have adopted.
Yeah.
But in general, it will be the other way around because the bigger entity will sort of subsume this smaller
Yeah.
one.
Just two more questions, sir. Of course, we cannot end a conversation without talking about Vande Bharat. I see this as a natural stepping stone from the Shatabdis and Rajdanis. Uh, is Vande Bharat doing what it is supposed to do? Is it catering to a niche which has been untouched so far? What is your views on the Vande Bharat system of trains?
See, Vande Bharat, as you may be aware, it started off as Train 18
Yeah.
purely as a initiative of the Integral Coach Factory
Yeah.
and the team of engineers who were there at the management there. And of course, the government could see the potential of this uh,
Yeah.
sudden stepping up of the level of comfort and riding and all that, and appearance, all this. So the Vande, it got converted into Vande Bharat. Now, the full potential of this can be realized if it can run at near about its potential today. What it can run is 160, which we are not able to do.
Yeah.
So it is now running at something like a Shatabdi Express. And once you introduce a high speed train, even of 130 kilometers per hour, on a track which is having freight trains, capacity gets affected because of that. Unless you have a dedicated track for the even the semi high speed, which will be a very costly proposition.
True.
So the full potential, speed potential is not yet realized, but from all available accounts, in general, the public is very happy. They are extremely, I mean, the complimentary remarks are there from passengers who have traveled. Of course, there are complaints,
Yeah.
an odd complaint here, there about some catering not being up to the mark
True.
and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in general, people are appreciative of the the improvement, and it is a self fulfilling cycle because once the public gets used to it, then they expect that higher standard to be maintained.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that gives a push for the organization
Yeah.
to improve it further,
Yeah.
even the other services.
True. True.
People can ask, oh, why only Vande Bharat? Why not the other Shatabdi Express or even an ordinary express train? Why
Yeah.
can't it be maintained as clean, if not with all those opulent fittings?
True.
Why not maintain like that? So people start asking questions, and that gives a motivation for you to improve.
True.
So all these are the
Yeah.
plus points.
Lastly, on safety, sir, how many accidents are one too many accidents in your view?
It's a question of its relativity. Today, you are talking about reported accidents of in the range of 40,
Yeah. Consequential accidents.
40, 45 consequential accidents. When we were in service around the turn of the millennium, I will frankly admit we went through one of the worst periods.
Mm.
Do you know how many were there in those years?
100 plus?
400,
Okay.
300 to 400. We had reached a stage where we had to say we want to improve. This cannot go on like this. We want more funds. And I'll give you the benefit of this. Once you are frank with what is happening without hiding, that I cannot go on like this, I want more funds. That was a presentation was made at that time by the then chairman railway board. I'm talking of 2000, 2001, in front of the then prime minister, and saying that this is how we are badly off. It was not a presentation to say we are doing gloriously, right the opposite. And we want funds. And to the credit of the then government, they agreed, if not what was asked for, at least a fraction of that. That is how that 17,000 crores
Okay.
a special railway safety fund was sanctioned.
Mm, mm,
And I'll give you an interesting, what do you call, a
Anecdote.
sequence of events. At the time when I retired around the 2001, I remember that figure. There were 22,000 kilometers of track of the Indian Railways which were overdue for
Replacement.
track renewal.
Oh.
The major contribution of this special railway safety fund was for track renewal.
Mm,
Within 3 or 4 years, most of it had been
mm.
overtaken.
22,000 of the 64,000 kilometers. So nearly one third of that at that time.
Today it is 64, and those days probably it was less, about
Okay.
56, 57, like that. So a large proportion of track needed to be renewed. This fund was sanctioned. It was this arrears were overtaken in about 3 to 4 years.
Mm,
And what came next? There was another government.
mm.
The idea of overloading the wagons.
Oh yeah, Lalus.
I am mentioning this not
Yeah,
who took what decisions.
got it. Yeah,
I am only bringing you to a larger point that a railway decisions, the decisions made on a railway, they don't stop with one government or the other. The benefit or the lack of benefit goes on.
yeah.
Now, if you had not overtaken those track renewals, nobody could have thought of putting extra load on the wagons,
Uh,
though it might have affected the wagons. I am aware of some studies which were done,
mm,
but that is beside the point. The point is that someone could take a decision
mm,
that, look here, I want to increase the loading of this wagons by X percentage, various types of wagons. Then you increase the loading, the financial position improved, and everybody said things have turned around and all that up to a point,
yeah,
yes. But then it was only a step. You
yeah.
had just jumped, and then again you are going at the same level. But the point I'm making is, suppose you had not overtaken those track arrears,
Mm,
would you have been able to overload the wagons? Nobody would have agreed.
true. Mm,
So every decision, the type of decisions you take, it has got a ramification for the coming years.
mm, mm,
And it has nothing to do with individual personality. It is that system functions according to the inputs that you put.
mm, mm.
And in this case, it was a positive thing that it happened that at some stage someone said, yes, we want so much money. That money was given, that money was used fairly productively, and therefore the arrears were overtaken, the track health improved, and then you could come up with this idea that you can overload. So that has given the benefit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Last question on Kavach, of course. Uh, Kavach versus other priorities like construction of a massive structure in, say, Egmore railway station or Ottapalam railway station or additional facilities in Delhi. Sh- would it? My mind thinks that track safety is more important. Power safety is more important. As far as possible, as much as money is possible should go into that. But unfortunately, we are talking about 2030 now to cover most of the tracks and most of the. Of course, there's a Hindu report data which says that it will take 100 years at the present pace to cover all the power heads that are available. What is your view on this?
No, these are two different aspects. One is, as far as Kavach is concerned, it is regarding safety,
Yeah.
and it deals with one aspect of safety, which is to prevent collisions. And no doubt, a collision of two trains is probably the worst type of accident or advertisement that you can give regarding a railway's working,
Yeah.
because everybody knows something is seriously wrong. A derailment here and there, many people may not even be aware that it is happening.
True.
So it gives a very bad picture. Apart from absolutely the loss of life is we cannot tolerate that. Whether you want to spend on that or not is again a decision which uh, uh, I won't call it a political decision, but as a policy you have to take. And in this case, it has been decided that entire system will be installed with this Kavach system,
Yeah.
which consists of two or three main things. One is the uh, mobile unit, which has to be fitted in the locomotives. Then you have the stationary units, which are there at the railway track, I mean, along the track and the stations and all that. And then you are also interlinked with certain obstructions or certain permanent features on the track, because all this has to be sensed by the system, and then it has to give a feedback and to give the clearance for the train to go or not to go.
Yeah.
This is a highly complex network, and personally I am not aware what is the experience of the South Central Railway after they have done this the system. They have installed over some 1,400 or 1,600 kilometers, and somewhere in North Frontier Railway also. I think they have done it. The fact is that once the entire system is covered with this, yes, it will give you a foolproof system for avoiding accidents of the nature of collisions, provided all the systems work. Now, that is something which the railways have to ensure. It is not as simple as just say you install it and then it starts working. It has to be maintained.
Yeah.
It has to be maintained under different conditions of weather, and the standards of maintenance have to be high. So, once that is there, then it is a foolproof system. And whether you spend it on Kavach or on beautification, again, it is, yes, you can say a political decision. You can have both. You can have a mix of this and that.
Yeah.
And whether what do you want in a station, whether it is grandeur,
Yeah.
whether it is a functionality, whether it has to be user friendly, whether you want it to be as cost effective at the same time easy to maintain, because what you are looking at today is not what it will be after 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will the organization be able to maintain those assets in the same condition that they are now? So these are questions which people have to ask before they invest in that.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. It has been a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. We will meet again soon.
Frontline Conversations. Leading the debate since 1984.